Prime Minister, Chancellor and President of the Council, ambassadors and ministers, ladies and gentlemen. I'm very pleased that with Prime Minister Keir Starmer today, we've been able to bring together 49 countries in a video conference, and that's along with the EU and the IMO. And I particularly want to thank Friedrich Merz, the German Chancellor, and Giorgia Meloni, for the President of the Italian Council, for being here today and giving this opportunity to talk to you now. The aim of our meeting was to achieve the reopening of the Strait of Hormuz. You know that this is against the background of the war in the region. The blockade started by Iran has had very severe consequences around the world, of course, for the neighboring countries to start with, many of which are important partners for our countries, for the ships, their crews, and the countries that directly depend on the goods that are shipped, in particular in Asia, but also for the whole of the planet and the global economy, whether we're talking about oil, gas, or fertilizers, would have a direct impact on our economies, and in particular, the most vulnerable countries. In that sense, recent events are encouraging, even if we have to remain prudent. Of course, we welcome the ceasefire between Iran and the United States, and we also welcome the ceasefire recently announced as regards Lebanon, which has to be fully observed. And we also welcome the announcement of reopening in exchange for the ceasefire, as announced by Iran, the reopening of the Strait of Hormuz. All that moves in the right direction, even though we see that the strait opening requires a route to be coordinated by the Iranians themselves, and the United States have said they intend to maintain a targeted blockade of Iranian ships. But in any case, all of this means that diplomacy is taking us forward, and the initiative we took together today is even more legitimate than before, because this is what's going to consolidate these short-term announcements, and in particular, give them a chance of lasting. So this meeting today of independent countries that are not involved in the hostilities that are ongoing produces a very simple message. We all demand the full, immediate and unconditional reopening of the Strait of Hormuz by all parties. We call for the restoration of free passage conditions that existed before the war, and for respect of the law of the sea. We oppose all restrictions or any convention regime that de facto would mean an attempt to privatize the strait. And of course, we oppose any type of toll system. We are working closely with ship owners, insurers, and other marine professionals to give them the visibility that will enable them to allow traffic to resume as soon as possible. In that sense, we support the ideas by the International Maritime Organization to provide support and help to those who are trapped. And to achieve this, we are going to reinforce and accelerate the planning we have already started, coordinated with the UK, so as to set up a mission that will be neutral, completely separate from any of the belligerents, so as to support and secure the merchant ships going through the Gulf. As of next week, there will be a planning meeting in London, and at the same time, of course, there will be ongoing diplomatic actions, and there will be full and close coordination with the Americans and the Israelis. We have already, as far as France is concerned, implemented substantial measures in the region to protect our nationals, secure our partners in the zone, and enable us to cope with any eventuality. For example, France has a robust naval force in the Eastern Mediterranean and the Red Sea, led by the Charles de Gaulle aircraft carrier, plus a number of other ships and craft and aircraft. So all of this will be used, some in the Eastern Mediterranean, some in the Red Sea, and some will go to the effort I've just described. So today's message is one of hope. It's also a message of preparation and unity. Europeans stood by the Gulf states, Asian states, African states, Latin American, Pacific states. So all the world came together in this coalition of independent states to ensure full observance of international law and freedom of navigation. Thank you very much. I'll now hand over to the Prime Minister.
Thank you very much, Emmanuel. We just had a very productive meeting, bringing together 49 countries around a very simple message and proposition that the world needs the Strait of Hormuz fully open, because that is how we keep prices down for our people and stop the global economic damage. So we've all agreed there was real unity in the meeting that we've just had. We want to see a return to talks and a lasting agreement, including the reopening of the Strait. We welcome the announcement that was made during our meeting, but we need to make sure that that is both lasting and a workable proposal. And if anything, it reinforces the need for the work that we've been doing this afternoon, because we're very clear that the mission that we're putting together is a defensive mission and that comes after a ceasefire. So that's why we brought the international group together to indicate how we will play our part. And there are a number of elements. First, to deliver the diplomatic push for peace based on the fundamental principle that the Strait should be reopened immediately with no tolls and no restrictions. And there was absolute unity on those points across all of the states attending today. And that transcends the other differences that countries who are with us this afternoon may have, because the whole world needs to see a solution here. Second, that we need to manage the economic shock by avoiding unnecessary trade restrictions, supporting energy and food security, and supporting industry so that shipping can resume as soon as conditions permit. Thirdly, and crucially, we agreed to accelerate our military planning. I can confirm that along with France, the UK will lead a multinational mission to protect freedom of navigation as soon as conditions allow. This will be strictly peaceful and defensive as a mission to reassure commercial shipping and support mine clearance. We invite all nations with an interest in the free flow of global trade to join us. Some have already indicated their readiness to contribute. We will take this forward with a military planning conference in London next week, where we will announce more detail on the composition of the mission, and over a dozen countries have already offered to contribute assets. But look, reopening the Strait is a global necessity and a global responsibility. We need to act to get global energy and trade flowing freely again to bring down prices for working people. Our citizens need to see a return to peace and stability, and we will play our full part. Thank you, Emmanuel.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you. Giorgia Meloni, President of the Italian Council. Good afternoon, everyone. Obviously, I would like to start by thanking President Macron and Prime Minister Starmer, which is a very positive and fundamental proposal, which is why I insist on being here today. It's quite clear that freedom of navigation in the Strait of Hormuz is vital for our country, for Italy, for Europe, and the international community in its entirety. We have to affirm a fundamental principle of international law, which is applicable not just to the Strait of Hormuz, but every other strait or shipping channel on which global supplies depend. Obviously, this is of great economic importance because about 20% of global oil and gas consumption, LNG, for example, goes through the Strait of Hormuz. And one shouldn't forget fertilizers, very important as well. And that is vital for food security in many countries. I'm thinking about also the exports from Gulf states that are key partners for Italy, and those goods have to go through the strait as well. This is why reopening the Strait of Hormuz has to enable us to address this situation, and at the same time is a key factor in resolving the Middle East conflict. We can, of course, see it very clearly in the last few hours. The reopening of the strait is of vital, fundamental importance as we go forward with negotiations. President Macron said there's been an announcement of a ceasefire in Lebanon, and we hear that a ceasefire has also been negotiated between Israel, Iran and the United States, leading to reopening of the strait. This has to be part and parcel of any serious process of negotiation to resolve the crisis in the Middle East. Obviously, it is not the only issue. It's vital for Iran to give up its quest for nuclear weapons, and there are other factors as well. But the main reason that we are here today is that we're all aware of how important this challenge is. And I would like to express my thanks, of course, to President Macron, but also to all the countries that took part in this morning's meeting, because I think this shows that the work we are doing is a shared effort. It's in everyone's interest. Obviously, this calls for diplomatic efforts, security efforts, humanitarian efforts. If we think of the ships that are blocked in the countries that are impacted by this crisis, and in all those areas, Italy is more than willing to play its role. To start with, we will focus on the ships that are now in the area around the strait. We have to make sure there are no mines in the seas there. We have to provide reassurance to maritime shipping industry to make them feel and know that their ships are safe going through the strait. And we feel that the best way to achieve this sort of mission you described, which will be purely defensive, that's a principle we all agree on. So at national level, serious planning is underway, and Italy is willing to take part in that framework by providing a certain number of naval units according to what will be authorized by the Italian Parliament as per our constitution. But that's in line with things we've done in the past with other missions. The mission Aspides, which was a mission that was implemented in an area close to the Strait of Hormuz, which is why I think we can see that as a good example. Today's meeting then was particularly productive, and I think shows quite clearly that Europe is willing to play its role alongside its partners, and this initiative will go forward in the framework of a broader process with the commitment of all our countries to address these crises that occur regularly, not just in the Middle East. There's also Ukraine and in other parts of the world. And Italy is doing everything it can to consolidate the ceasefire in Lebanon, which is of great importance, achieved thanks to the mediation of the United States. And it's vital that negotiations are resumed so that we can reach a positive conclusion with resolution and patience, of course, as always. Thank you very much, Emmanuel. Friedrich. Dear Emmanuel, and Prime Minister Starmer, let me start by saying I'm very grateful that French President and the UK Prime Minister decided to convene this meeting today, and I'm pleased also that Giorgia Meloni for Italy and myself for the Republic have been able to be here. We had enormous agreement and consensus, both here in the room and those in the video conference. And I was actually quite surprised to see how complete the agreement was around the various tables. And that meant that we all stood behind the conclusion that came out of this meeting, because this war against Iran raises major challenges for all of us. We want the Near Middle East as soon as possible to return to peace and stability. It's in the interest of all of us. The skyrocketing energy prices have to be brought back downwards as soon as possible. And this war must not turn into a transatlantic stress test. Therefore, I think we can draw a number of conclusions of this together, because the challenges I've just mentioned hit us all, impact all of the EU countries and beyond. And if we don't succeed in the initiatives we've taken, then there's the threat of a multidimensional global war. And let me say here that I take very seriously what was said in Washington last year during the meetings of the IMF and the World Bank concerning developments on the capital markets, which means that it's in the immediate interest of all of us to increase our efforts and draw these conclusions, of which I think there are three. And as Germany, we support the ongoing efforts to achieve a quick diplomatic agreement between the United States and Iran. On our side, we are in contact with all the stakeholders for many months now. We have seen that Tehran has not entered into dialogue, but we want to reach a conclusion as quickly as possible. And we agree with all our partners that Iran must terminate its nuclear program, must stop attacking Israel and the Gulf states, and it must ensure the opening of the strait in a way that is lasting, secure and toll-free. We got a good piece of news during our discussions today, but of course this has to be implemented in full observance with national law of the sea. There must be no restrictions. Merchant shipping and their crews have to have unrestricted passage through the strait. Secondly, we welcome the resumption of direct peace talks between Israel and Lebanon. This is a historical opportunity for these two companies, these two neighboring countries, to come together. Hezbollah must lay down its weapons and not attack Israel anymore. But Israel must also make an effort to ensure lasting peace. I recently spoke with Prime Minister Netanyahu. It was a telephone call. And I would like to thank the USA for their apparently successful efforts in ensuring a ceasefire. And thirdly, given the upcoming conference in London next year, we are willing to make a German contribution to ensuring freedom of navigation in the Strait of Hormuz. This could mean at the end of negotiations, perhaps a contribution by the German armed forces to an international mission, as long as we have a strong legal basis for this, for example, a UN Security Council resolution. And we also need approval of the German government and parliament and a viable military concept. This sort of participation could mean mine clearance, for example. That is something we're able to do, and therefore we will continue to take part in the ongoing and future military planning talks. And if possible, we would like to ensure participation by the United States. We feel that would be desirable. And we would also like to have a UN Security Council resolution. So I think we are seeing progress. We want to make our contribution so that we can have very soon stable and lasting peace in the region. Thank you. you.